What if one small letter could destroy the life you had spent decades building? In the Gilded Age, when the outward grandeur and gilded interiors of Fifth Avenue mansions concealed a rigid social hierarchy, private correspondence was the most dangerous weapon. For women of that era, reputation was the only currency, and ink on paper could turn a socialite into an outcast overnight. We peek behind the closed doors of ladies' boudoirs, where secret drawers held secrets capable of destroying empires and families. This is a story of passion, betrayal, and the invisible threads that society used to bind hearts and hands. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn how a simple piece of paper became the most sophisticated tool of blackmail in the history of high society. To begin with, I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of this era, one that changes everything in our perception of the past. It is important to understand that at the end of the 19th century, letters were the only means of communication, but they also became eternal evidence against their owners. Women of the Gilded Age lived in a world where their every word could be misinterpreted and personal feelings were considered a weakness. Letters did not simply convey information, they recorded every movement of the soul, which according to the rules of etiquette had to remain hidden. These lines, written by candlelight, contained confessions that would never have been dared to be spoken aloud at a ball. Each envelope, sealed with wax, became a potential time bomb in the hands of ill-wishers or servants. Servants were often silent witnesses to the dramas unfolding in the boudoir, and they were the first to understand the value of these papers. A discarded note or a message left on the table could become a bargaining chip, ensuring a comfortable life for a maid for many years to come. For a noble lady, losing control of her correspondence meant losing control of her own destiny and the future of her children. Society did not forgive sincerity if it went beyond the tightly closed doors of private chambers. In this world, wealth did not bring freedom, but only imposed additional obligations to maintain an impeccable facade. Letters kept the truth about unhappy marriages, concluded for the sake of combining capital, and about secret attachments that saved people from loneliness. Women spent hours at their desks, creating entire worlds out of words that were never meant to see the light of day. Every tender word or hint of intimacy was a direct violation of an unspoken agreement with society. Reputation was fragile glass that shattered at the slightest touch of truth captured on paper. It is interesting to see how this topic is perceived in different parts of the world, because the fear of exposure is universal in any era. Do you agree that women were much more vulnerable to public opinion in those days than they are today? Write about your view of this social injustice in the comments below this video. Each of your opinions helps us better understand the tragedy of women in that great but harsh era. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new chapters from the life of a vanished world of luxury and secrets. Are you ready to learn the truth about how feelings were encrypted in short notes? In an era when dozens of eyes watched every step, even the choice of paper and ink color was of paramount importance. Women used special scented sheets so that the recipient could recognize the sender before even opening the envelope. But this same detail could give away the secret if the letter fell into the hands of a jealous husband or vigilant mother-in-law. Every detail of the correspondence was thought out to minimize risk, but passion often proved stronger than caution. The use of allegories and hidden meanings was a mandatory skill for any lady of high society at that time. Discussing the weather or the upcoming opera season could conceal the exact time and place of a secret meeting in the park. Such letters were often written between the lines or using codes that only the two lovers, seeking refuge in words, could understand. However, the professional blackmailers of the time were as skilled at reading between the lines as the most sophisticated recipients. They knew that formal phrases often concealed a storm of emotions that could be sold at a profit. Particular attention was paid to how the letters were delivered to the addressee, bypassing the official mail and curious household members. Often, special couriers were hired for this purpose, or the services of trusted individuals were used, who risked their jobs for the sake of remuneration. Each such intermediary became another weak link in the security chain, increasing the chances of a fatal mistake. One wrong move, one intercepted envelope, and a brilliant life in a mansion could be replaced by shame and exile. The letter became physical evidence of guilt that could not be dismissed with a simple denial. How difficult do you think it was to keep your cool knowing that your fate depended on a piece of paper in someone else's hands? In the next chapter, you will learn what hiding places Gilded Age women used to conceal their most intimate confessions. You've probably never heard of this unique secret because the furniture of that time was a true masterpiece of engineering. To keep their secrets from prying eyes, ladies ordered secretaries with incredibly complex systems of double bottoms and hidden mechanisms. Master cabinet makers created tables where pressing a certain carving opened a hidden niche that no one but the owner knew about. These hiding places became the last refuge for letters that were too painful to burn, but too dangerous to keep out in the open. Each such cavity in the wood was filled with tears and hopes hidden from the cold world. Sometimes letters were hidden in the most unexpected places, such as inside the upholstery of armchairs or behind the lining of expensive dresses in dressing rooms. Women showed incredible ingenuity, turning interior items into silent guardians of their private lives and reputations. Often, such hiding places were only discovered decades later, when old furniture fell into the hands of restorers or new owners. These discoveries revealed the true faces of women who, during their lifetime, seemed like cold and flawless statues in their gilded living rooms. Behind each hidden drawer was a story of the struggle for the right to personal space and feelings. But even the most reliable hiding places could not protect against the betrayal of those in close proximity. Maids who cleaned the rooms often knew about the existence of secret mechanisms and could use this knowledge for their own purposes. Blackmail with letters became a real industry in the shadow of glittering balls, where information was more valuable than diamonds. Women found themselves trapped. They could not destroy the letters because they were their only connection to their loved ones. But keeping them was like keeping poison. It was a constant game with death, where the stakes were not life, but something more valuable: honor. Like this, if you are moved by the quiet struggle of women of the past for their right to love and privacy. Your support helps us continue our search for these amazing stories in the dusty archives of history. What if I told you that many fortunes of the time were built on trading other people's secrets extracted from letters? Professional blackmailers were often descended from impoverished aristocracy or enterprising tabloid journalists looking for easy money. They created entire networks for gathering compromising information, bribing servants and postal workers for access to private correspondence. For a woman whose name was a symbol of purity and social status, receiving a letter demanding a ransom was the beginning of a long nightmare. Often, the sums demanded by the criminals were astronomical, forcing the ladies to pawn their family jewels. The blackmail process was carried out with particular cynicism, emphasizing the victim's helplessness in the face of public opinion. Blackmailers sent copies of letters, hinting that the originals could end up in the editorial office of a major newspaper or on their spouse's desk. The women were forced to conduct secret negotiations in dubious areas of the city, risking their safety in order to get the compromising papers back. Each such meeting was humiliating and psychologically devastating, turning life into an endless series of fear and lies. In this case, wealth did not protect the victim, but only made them more attractive to the extortionists. Often, even after huge sums had been paid, the letters were not returned to their owners, and the blackmailer continued to demand money again and again. This turned into a lifelong bondage from which there was virtually no escape without a public scandal and the collapse of the husband's career. Many women lived for years under this oppression, hiding their tragedy behind fake smiles at receptions and charity dinners. Letters that once brought joy became an instrument of slow torture, sucking out life and money. The history of the Gilded Age is full of such invisible tragedies, hidden under layers of silk and lace. Do you think women at that time had the opportunity to protect themselves legally in such situations? In the next chapter, we will discuss how society reacted to the secrets that were revealed and why publicity was worse than death itself. When letters did become public, social death was instantaneous and merciless for the fallen heroine. Victorian society and the world of the Gilded Age acted as a single mechanism of exclusion, erasing a person from the list of the living. Friends who had sworn loyalty only yesterday stopped sending invitations and turned away when they met on a walk in the park. The woman found herself locked inside her home, which was transformed from a luxurious mansion into a veritable prison. Husbands often filed for divorce, which in those days meant the complete loss of rights to children and property. The newspapers of the time relished the details of the correspondence, exposing the most intimate confessions and feelings for all to see. The publication of personal letters was akin to public humiliation, depriving women of their remaining dignity and humanity. Headlines were peppered with quotes from love letters, turning personal drama into cheap entertainment for the masses. No past achievements or charitable activities could outweigh the weight of a few careless phrases written on paper. Society demanded absolute purity of image, and any shadow on it was unacceptable. For many women, such a loss of status was the end of the road, as they were not trained to live outside high society. Deprived of their livelihood and family support, they often ended their days in obscurity and poverty. The letters that caused their downfall remained in the archives as silent witnesses to how easily a human life could be destroyed. This cruelty was the basis of a social order maintained by fear and constant surveillance of one another. In a world where appearances meant everything, inner truth was the most dangerous and unwanted guest. What I am about to show you takes place behind the closed doors of the wealthiest homes and is usually hidden from the eyes of historians. Servants were invisible shadows who knew much more about their masters than their closest relatives or lawful spouses. Maids had access to bedrooms, offices, and wastebaskets, where drafts or torn letters often ended up. It was in the hands of the servants that the threads that could either save a lady or destroy her completely ended up. The loyalty of servants was often bought not only with salary, but also with fear of mutual exposure. However, the temptation of easy money often outweighed years of attachment and a sense of duty to the employer. The sale of a single letter could bring a maid an amount equivalent to several years of hard work in a mansion. Footmen and messengers also participated in this trade, creating an internal market for information within each wealthy household. Women were forced to curry favor with their servants, feeling a constant threat from those who brought them their morning coffee. This created an atmosphere of paranoia and mistrust that permeated even the most intimate moments of home life. It was often through the servants that blackmailers obtained information about which box contained valuable correspondence. Servants could discreetly steal a letter for a few hours to make a copy and return it to its place without arousing suspicion. A lady could go for years without suspecting that her secret had long since been sold and resold on the black market of social gossip. It was a hidden class war where the weapons were not barricades but intimate confessions on paper. In this struggle, the masters had wealth, but the servants had knowledge that was worth much more than gold. Did you know that many maids kept their own diaries where they wrote down everything they saw in their masters' homes? In the next chapter, you will learn why burning letters was the only sure but difficult way to save them. The only way to guarantee safety was to completely destroy the letters immediately after reading them, but this required incredible willpower. For many women, these lines were the only proof that they were loved and that their lives had value beyond their social functions. Burning a letter was perceived as a small death, an act of betrayal of one's feelings and of the addressee. Ladies often postponed this moment, rereading the messages over and over again until the ink began to fade with time. Every minute of keeping the letter increased the risk, but also prolonged the illusion of happiness in a cold world of rules. Fireplaces in ladies' studies served not only to provide warmth, but also as faithful guardians, turning dangerous secrets to ashes. Watching the fire devour the paper became a regular and sad ritual in the lives of many socialites. Sometimes letters were burned in a hurry when the footsteps of a husband or uninvited guest were heard in the hallway, risking burns to the hands. The ashes were carefully mixed so that not a single word could be recovered, even with the most thorough examination. It was a voluntary erasure of one's history for the sake of preserving the social facade and the future of the family. The destruction of correspondence also meant that future generations would never know the truth about the lives of their great-grandmothers. Many personal archives of that time were deliberately destroyed by their owners before their death, so as not to tarnish the reputation of the family. We can only guess at the scale of the passions that were turned to ashes in the fireplaces of the Victorian era. The history of the Gilded Age that we see today is only a cleaned up and polished version of reality, stripped of its sharpest edges. Behind the flawless portraits in heavy frames lie thousands of burned pages of unfulfilled hopes and forbidden feelings. Sometimes letters did survive, remaining in secret drawers for decades until they were found by chance. These discoveries allow us today to reconstruct a true picture of women's lives at the end of the 19th century. Each surviving letter is a voice from the past, telling of pain, fear, and incredible courage. Researchers find such messages in abandoned estates and in the archives of antique shops, restoring the names of forgotten heroines. These papers show that human nature remained unchanged even under the yoke of the harshest and most absurd social norms. The letters found often contain not only declarations of love, but also detailed descriptions of the daily life, fears, and hopes of the time. Women wrote about their loneliness in huge houses, about pressure from relatives, and about dreams of freedom. Correspondence became a kind of therapy, allowing them to express what was forbidden to discuss even with their closest friends. These documents are invaluable for understanding the psychology of an era where outward prosperity was only a mask. Every line written 100 years ago resonates today with the hearts of those who seek the truth behind the facade of history. Interestingly, many such finds are made during the demolition of old buildings or during the major renovation of historic mansions. Letters that have fallen out of their hiding places behind the back walls of furniture are preserved in perfect condition thanks to the absence of light and air. They become a bridge between centuries, reminding us of the price that had to be paid for the right to be oneself in the past. Today, we can read these lines without fear for their authors, but with deep respect for their secrets. The legacy of the Age of Splendor is not only architecture and painting, but also these fragile testimonies of the human soul. In Gilded Age society, women's right to private correspondence was very conditional and often challenged by the head of the family. Husbands considered it their duty to control their wives' contacts, fearing not only infidelity, but also any influences that could undermine their authority. Letters addressed to a lady were often checked or read before they reached her. This created an atmosphere of constant surveillance, where even communication with friends could be subject to suspicion and questioning. Women were required to account for every message they received and sent, which deprived them of any privacy. Many men of that time used their wives' letters as an excuse to establish complete control over their lives and finances. The threat of opening correspondence or banning it altogether was a powerful tool of psychological pressure in family conflicts. For women, refusing to correspond meant complete social isolation, as it was the only way to stay in touch with the world. In such conditions, correspondence became an act of quiet disobedience, requiring cunning and caution. Women learned to use neutral topics as a cover for their true thoughts and intentions. At the same time, men's correspondence was considered inviolable and protected by the head of the household's right to privacy. This double standard was the basis of gender inequality in an era where the freedom of one was built on the restriction of the other. Women saw this injustice but were powerless to change anything without risking their position. They created their own rules of the game within the system, using paper and ink as their only available weapons. The history of letters is the history of the struggle for the recognition of women as individuals with the right to their own thoughts and secrets. As we conclude our journey into the world of dangerous letters, we see how much our understanding of privacy has changed. Today, in the age of digital communications, we often forget how tangible and dangerous information was in the past. The experiences of women in the Gilded Age teach us to value the ability to freely express our feelings without fear of social ruin. Their stories are a reminder that a reputation built solely on external rules will always be fragile. A person's true value lies in their inner truth, even if it was once hidden in a secret drawer of a secretary desk. The letters of the past remind us of the importance of empathy and understanding for those who lived under severe restrictions. We should not judge them for their secrets, but rather admire their ability to maintain their humanity in a golden cage. Every life destroyed because of a piece of paper is a lesson in the cruelty of a society that puts rules above people. By studying these dramas, we gain a better understanding of the origins of the modern struggle for human rights and personal freedoms. The shadows of the past continue to speak to us from the pages of old letters, calling for sincerity and compassion. This chapter of Gilded Age history remains one of the most moving and profound, as it touches on the very heart of human relationships. The sparkle of diamonds and the luxury of balls fade with time, but the pain and love captured in letters remain alive. We must cherish these testimonies to remember the path society has taken in its quest for freedom and equality. May the story of the dangerous letters serve as a reminder that words have enormous power, the power to destroy and the power to save. We hope this story has helped you feel the breath of that era and empathize with its invisible heroes. We conclude our story about a time when a single letter could change the course of an entire family's history. These dramas, hidden behind the facades of luxurious mansions, remind us of how precious independence was in an era when rules meant more than feelings. What thoughts did this story about the paper shackles of Victorian women evoke in you? It is very important for us to know your opinion because the topics of personal freedom and reputation are relevant at all times. Tell us in the comments what other aspects of life in the Gilded Age or Victorian era you would like to explore with us. Subscribe to the channel to continue this fascinating dive into the mysteries of the past that still stir our hearts.